Power relationships affected the development and the spread of both religious and scientific practices in the early modern world, in the way I see it, broadly three main ways between science and religion. These main ways heavily contrast each other and were spearheaded by people who were likewise opposed to the others. Comparing how the scientific enlightenment of the early modern world had acceptance, compromise, and especially hostility is important to see how this era shaped the world we live in today. But to truly understand this, we've got to go back in time, far back in time. Because we have to raise the question, how did we get here? That is, of course, the Enlightenment/scientific revolution. Well, one thing's for certain. We didn't get here overnight, and it certainly didn't just take one person. Nicholas Copernicus, Galileo Galilei, and Isaac Newton, to name just a few, are some of the more influential scientists of this period. With Copernicus publishing the book on the revolutions of the heavenly spheres, he introduced the world to one of the most game-changing theories of all time, the heliocentric theory, the theory that the Earth was not the center of the universe, and the sun rather was. While this theory fueled main debates in the Enlightenment, it was by no means the only scientific theory of the time. Newton's laws of gravitational force and Galileo's exploration of the universe were also incredibly important to the influx of research and knowledge that the Enlightenment would bring around the world. So, after all these findings, the public was finally at last able to fully explore and understand the universe as best they could at the time, right? Well, no. Wrong. Skepticism played a small role in day-to-day people, but the large controversies that would stem from the Enlightenment and scientific revolution would be with religion, and specifically the Catholic Church. After all, Catholicism was the leading religion in Europe where the scientific revolution took place. And the Church did not take too kindly to, especially the heliocentric theory, those challenges on their religion and their teachings, even going as far to threaten Galileo with execution in 1636 if he did not recant. However, leaders of the Enlightenment were not just complacent. They too showed much hostility towards the ways of the Church, and specifically their opposition to the scientific theories, even going as far to saying that the old ways must be thrown out. Okay, so we've gone over a lot of information, but we've still only looked at one of the three main reactions to the Enlightenment that I mentioned earlier: hostility. A good way to show the true nature of this combative attitude is to contrast it with another main reaction: compromise. While scientists from the Enlightenment were very opposed to the old ways of life from the Catholic Church, they did not turn to atheism. Religion is still something that many of them sought after all. Religion itself was not what enlightened scientists fought. It was the inability for the Church to acknowledge new theories. Even Galileo went as far to hold a council with the leaders of the Church in 1615 to convince them of the heliocentric theory. He did all this, and then they still went on to threaten him with execution in 1636. Not cool, guys. After being met with denial after denial, the scientists found their own compromise, with the scientific revolution and Enlightenment creating new religions, such as deism and pantheism. The Church still made very few concessions at first, which is actually a great way to show the power dynamics in this era. The Church held the majority of its power in the beginning through public opinion. When the heliocentric theory was beginning, the Church and public had no real reason to take it seriously. However, as more time went on and we went forward, the Church's threats became increasingly brutal and the public became increasingly curious. The Church finally seriously allowed some Enlightenment teachings much later in time. This was one of the most overt headways in progress relating to the relationship with the Catholic Church and the Enlightenment and scientific revolution. The Church officially endorsed the heliocentric theory and apologized for their actions against those trying to teach it. Compromise has now finally shifted into our last point: acceptance, the last relationship between the Church and scientific findings. These topics, compromise and acceptance, actually go hand in hand with each other, along with being great ways to contrast the hostile attitudes so common in the early modern era from both the scientists of the scientific revolution and the high-ranking members of the Catholic Church in Europe. Okay, so that was quite the blast to the past. In conclusion, the Enlightenment had no clear victors throughout its period. However, after a long game of cat and mouse, both scientists came to understand and respect religion, and the church came to respect the Enlightenment. The early modern era was a time of belief, wonder, and anger. But, most of all, in the end, of acceptance and importance.